Part 59. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mo. Chapter 581. The woman lying in the crystal coffin with her eyes closed, like a sleeping beauty, is Su Wen, one of Mu Chiu's 3 disciples, and also the beast king in the nest of all beasts. Looking at Su Wen sleeping in the crystal coffin, Mu Chiu had expected something in his heart. Yefanyan has come to this era through the door of reincarnation, so Su Wen, who also opened the door of reincarnation, naturally has a great chance to come here. After all, Su Wen had the experience of crossing before. I have been waiting for the Lord Demon for a long time, and only you can save the Beast King. Mu Chiu did not speak, walked forward with his eyes slightly narrowed, and slowly stretched out a hand. Suddenly, a white mist emanated from his palm, and a door with an ancient style emerged in the mist. Immediately, the door continued to expand in front of Mu Chiu, and finally floated in the air. The white mist turned into giant pythons that coiled around the door, locking it tightly. Looking closely, the top chain had turned dark red. Even though Lu Qianqian and the Tree King were Deyuan level masters, they could not see the path of reincarnation. They could only vaguely see the outline of a door in front of Mu Chiu. Although they could not see the true face of the door of reincarnation, they also felt the ancient breath from the 6 paths of reincarnation. Even the vicissitudes of life Tree King who had survived for tens of thousands of years felt the mighty momentum in it. At the moment when the door of reincarnation was opened, the crystal coffin containing Su Wen suddenly shone brightly. I saw that in the patterned bracelet on Su Wen's right hand, crystal blue light shone out, all gathered in the ancient door in front of Mu Chiu. In an instant, the gate of reincarnation opened wide, and the deep roar of some strange beast seemed to be heard from inside. The entire gate also turned dark blue, flickering with a dark light like the fire of the underworld. Mu Chiu's mouth corners slightly raised, and he looked down at the woman sleeping in the crystal coffin in front of him, turned around and stepped into the crystal blue gate of reincarnation in front of him. In the vast dark blue sky, Mu Chiu's body gradually became solid. His figure was suspended in the air, but what he saw was another world. Unlike the blood sea world of the hungry ghosts, there was a vast dark blue underworld below. All kinds of strange birds, beasts, insects, worms, and ants appeared in this world. A bird with horns on its head flew through the sky, a giant python covered with scales rose up, and a huge insect covered with eyes devoured the strange beasts and monsters on the ground. The world here gives people a sense of weirdness and fear, and there is a sense of unknown weirdness and crisis everywhere. Ka, ka. Suddenly, a faint light flashed in the void behind Mu Chiu, and a sharp-beaked strange bird with dense long legs under its body attacked Mu Chiu's back. Just when the sharp bird's beak was about to pierce Mu Chiu's neck, Mu Chiu suddenly raised his right arm, and a string of hot flames mixed with lightning wrapped around his arm, and then swung his arm. Bang! As Mu Chiu punched out, the body of the sharp-beaked strange bird was instantly killed by the thunder and flames, and turned into charred slag and scattered. Hiss! At this moment, strange-looking terrifying monsters appeared around Mu Chiu, and a terrifying breath surrounded him. Sorry, I don't have time to play games with you now. Suddenly, an extremely strong red flame burst out from Mu Chiu's body, burning the surrounding beasts into slag. His eyes turned blood red, and the Megatama could be vaguely seen circling in them. The scattered hair began to grow wildly behind his head, and the hair was also stained with a touch of fiery red. Even Mu Chiu's appearance changed, and his handsome face gradually became evil and charming. Just then, Mu Chiu seemed to feel something, looking at a certain direction in the distance, with a gleam in his eyes. I saw that he was wrapped in flames, and in an instant he broke through the heavy encirclement of the beasts, and his figure faintly turned into a circling dragon, rushing into the distance like a stream of light. Roar! Somewhere in the deep blue nether wasteland came a roar of a monster. A girl in a floral dress was running desperately in the wilderness, and behind her was a large group of terrifying beasts running endlessly. The girl looked no more than a teenager, with a pair of ponytails on her head, and she ran towards the unknown abyss in front of her with a panicked face. The girl was holding a palm-sized brown squirrel in her arms, and a sparrow was hovering beside her. Suddenly, the ground in front of the girl bulged, and a several-meter-long earthworm with scales on its body turned over the ground, opened its mouth full of fangs, and blocked the girl's way. The girl also fell to the ground because of the bumpy ground, and her petite body couldn't stop trembling. Hiss! The squirrel and sparrow next to her shouted and were about to fly forward, but they were flipped to the ground by the giant earthworm's tail. Www. Kuakuo, Mau Mau. The girl screamed in her mouth, and tears flashed in her eyes. At this moment, the ground behind her trembled, and countless beasts rushed towards her. A giant tiger with fangs all over its body pounced on her impatiently, wanting to tear the girl apart and devour her. The petite girl in a dress closed her eyes in despair, and a line of tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. But the expected severe pain did not come, and the girl actually felt a familiar warmth. Even the roar of the giant tiger gradually disappeared, and a whistling wind sounded in her ears. Huh! The girl subconsciously raised her head and found herself wrapped in boiling flames. A broad back wearing flowing fire and crimson armor appeared in front of her, and a majestic fire was wrapped around his hands. As this figure slowly turned his head, revealing a familiar handsome face, with a wicked smile on the corner of his mouth. "Little girl, why did you come to this place alone? Your parents will be unhappy. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord." Author, MOCNU. Chapter 582. The fiery red hair danced along the flames, and the handsome face was wearing an evil smile. Seeing such a familiar face, Su Wen's eyes were filled with hot tears, and she murmured to herself, "Teacher, your parents will be worried if you go to such a place alone." Mu Qiu turned his head and smiled, and then said, "Although there are still many things I want to say, let's talk about the past later." The Megatama swirled in his blood-red eyes, turning into a scarlet blood moon. "I still have to teach these disobedient little guys a lesson." "Who?" As Mu Qiu's voice fell, golden thunders and flames intertwined on his armor, and an extremely dangerous and terrifying aura spread around him. But the countless ferocious beasts around him obviously had no idea of the danger. In this world, they have even lost their instinct to avoid danger. In the blink of an eye, countless ferocious beasts have rushed towards Mu Qiu and the others. At the same time, a large number of beasts emerged on the horizon in the distance, and the sky was occupied by dense beasts. Energy fluctuations that were extremely terrifying even in the outside world all attacked the two. Facing the countless beasts rushing towards him, Mu Qiu laughed wildly, the box of ghosts on his chest trembled slightly, and a demon sword wrapped in thunder and fire appeared in his hand. He waved his hand, and a sword light of more than 10 meters long blasted out. Time seemed to be suspended at this moment. The blood-red silk of thunder and fire passed through the air in a semicircular arc, and all the beasts and monsters were annihilated under the thunder and fire storm. The endless beast tide actually had a visible gap at this moment, but soon this gap was filled by more and more beasts. There were galloping footsteps on the ground, and the whistling of a hurricane in the sky. Compared with this huge beast tide, Mu Qiu and the others were as small as a speck of dust in the desert. Hiss! A giant python with a human face and a snake body leaped up from the air, and its mouth full of fangs opened to an extent that ordinary people could not imagine, and it was actually trying to swallow Mu Qiu in one gulp. But at this moment, a dark black flame suddenly erupted beside Mu Qiu. Roar! The pitch-black flame turned into a huge black flame tiger, which attacked the giant python with a raging flame wave. Nether Evil Tiger! The bright red blood spurted out and splashed on the body of the Nether Evil Tiger, and the flowing black flame hair carried a trace of blood-colored light. On the other side, above the dark blue sky, thunder was thundering, and Mewtwo stood in the air, holding a demon sword, and his whole body was surrounded by flames. Every time the blade was swung, a large number of strange beasts were annihilated under the destructive blade. Flames were entangled around him, and bloody souls poured out from the bocks of the monsters, wreaking havoc in this reincarnation world full of strange monsters. Moo. At this moment, a deafening roar came from the cliff in the distance, like thunder, and a terrifying breath was brewing from it. With a bang, the dark blue mountain collapsed instantly, and a huge figure stepped out of the mountain with an ancient breath. In an instant, a vast and boundless ancient breath emanated from this huge creature that walked out of the deep mountains. Oh! Mewtwo narrowed his eyes slightly. The momentum emanating from this monster was countless times stronger than other monsters in this world. This monster was about tens of meters tall, with a body like a cow, but there were no horns on its head, and there was only one leg among the four limbs of the lower body, and the skin of the whole body was a kind of green. When this huge monster appeared, a violent storm suddenly blew up in the sky, and dark purple lightning shuttled across the sky with great momentum. The walking of this one-legged cow-shaped monster was even more strange. Its huge body jumped on the ground, and every step it took would cause the ground under its feet to collapse. The thunder in the sky became more and more huge, as if a thunder beast was going to swallow up the world. The beast, like a mountain, crushed towards Mewtwo, and its pair of scarlet eyes were full of tyranny. The dark purple lightning wrapped around its body, and all the strange beasts it passed by were blasted into pieces by the thunder and lightning. Looking at the vast mountains coming towards him, Mewtwo narrowed his eyes and murmured. It looks like a cow, with one horn and one foot, its body is dark green, shining like the sun and the moon, roaring like thunder, often accompanied by violent storms, its name is Quay. At this moment, Mewtwo also learned the identity of the giant cow in front of him. It was the ancient mythical beast recorded in the classic of mountains and seas Quay Niu. Roar. As if responding to the birth of Quay Niu, the beast tied below let out a low roar of various beasts. In an instant, all the beasts roared together. The space where Mewtwo was located was the animal path of the 6 reincarnations, which was responsible for the animals that lived by the sideways. Finally a big fish has come, it can almost let me stretch my hands and feet. Mewtwo smiled, standing in the air, his long red hair fluttering in the wind, and suddenly a thunderous dragon roar sounded behind him. Faintly, a huge dragon shadow several dozen feet long, covering the sky and the sun, shuttled and rose from the endless flames. The terrifying dragon power instantly overwhelmed the ancient aura emitted by the Kuan-Yu, and resounded throughout the world. The Kuan-Yu standing on the ground seemed to sense something, raised its heavy head and looked in the direction of Mewtwo, and roared like thunder. With the appearance of the giant dragon that covered the sky and the sun, the whole world suddenly became dark. A biting cold wind blew in the air, the 4 seasons changed, and the rainstorm mixed with thunder disturbed the sky. A pair of red eyes looked down at all living things through the clouds. At this moment, Zilong appeared in the world. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the Flame Demon Lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 583. In a palace complex surrounded by clouds and mist, Qi Xiaoxiao was wandering around bored. During the time she followed Mewtwo, her strength not only grew by leaps and bounds, but she also saw a brand new world that she had never experienced before. She had never thought that the high and mighty Owl King would also die one day. After all, her father was the Chaos Beast Owl King among the 12 Night Owls. In her impression, her father had always been majestic and domineering, and no one in the 10 directions dared to disobey his orders. But the appearance of Mewtwo obviously overturned her cognition. With such a strong attitude, he crushed the undead Owl King, who was one of the 12 Owl Kings like his father. This also gave Qi Xiaoxiao new hope. She believed that as long as she followed Mu Qiu and devoted herself to learning skills, one day she would be able to grow into an existence like the Owl King and avenge her deceased mother. Qi Xiaoxiao clenched her fists, her eyes revealing a firm look. 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west, don't bully a poor girl. However, at this moment, the sky above her head was suddenly covered with dark clouds, and groups of deep black fog covered the sky and the sun, covering the entire palace. A series of powerful auras swept through the air from a very far distance, and looking around, a cavalry standing proudly on the fierce beast appeared above the palace. This cavalry was wearing armor and looked like humans, but their skin was dark purple, their eyes were blood red, and there were strange patterns on their faces. The leader was a tall figure with a demon mask on his face, wearing black armor, and blood-red patterns carved on the armor. When this man appeared, there was an endless surge of evil spirits around him, swallowing clouds and spitting out mist, as if gathering into a fierce beast to swallow the ground under his feet. Who dares to trespass into the palace of Meiji? At this time, a group of women in palace dresses walked out of the palace below, led by the woman in palace dress with rabbit ears on her head. When the woman in palace dress saw the identity of the person coming, she immediately bowed to the people behind her and said, "Welcome to the Night Demon Owl King." The masked man nodded slightly and said in a low voice, "Where is Meiji?" The woman in palace dress hesitated. "My queen, she is not here now." The Night Demon Owl King looked at a palace deep inside, and the breath was indeed not here. Suddenly, as if he had noticed something, the Night Demon Owl King's eyes condensed. As he raised his hand, a purple evil spirit blasted out, instantly destroying a certain building below. Seeing that the palace was directly blasted to pieces, many of the subordinates, including the woman in palace dress, did not dare to get angry at all. Because the one in front of him was the eternal Night Owl King who suppressed a territory, and his strength was at the top of the Owl King level. Under the collapsed ruins, a petite girl with animal ears was sneaking out of her head with panic in her eyes. "Xiao Xiao, why are you here?" At this moment, the man next to the Night Demon Owl King suddenly exclaimed and looked at the girl with joy. Even the Night Demon Owl King looked at Qi Xiaoxiao's figure at this moment. Little girl of Chaos Beast. For a moment, the girl was stared at by countless sharp eyes. "Gilialo." Swallowing her saliva, the girl said nervously, "If I say that I am just passing by here, do you believe it?" On the other side, in an unknown world that was as dark blue as the underworld, black and red flames were colliding violently with dark purple thunder. The dark blue underworld below was mostly destroyed by thunder and fire, and countless huge beasts were annihilated under the destructive energy fluctuations. Boom! At this moment, a roar like thunder and lightning suddenly sounded in the distance, and a huge monster wrapped in purple lightning could be seen faintly on the horizon in the distance. This was a huge bull with purple lightning wrapped around its body. Although it had a bull's face, it had a single horn on its head, and its whole body exuded an extremely ancient and terrifying aura. Kuei Niu. At this time, Kuei Niu's eyes were bloodshot, and the skin and flesh on its body were cracked, and even large areas of skin showed signs of burnt and festering. But Kuei Niu's eyes were fixed on a figure not far ahead. The dark blue sky had gradually been stained with blood red, and a red dragon several dozen feet long was hovering in the sky. The sound of dragon roars resounded through the clouds, and a tall figure in red armor could be seen circling the red dragon. The fiery red hair mixed with the embers of Yanlang fluttered in the wind, and there was always a contemptuous smile on the evil face. The blood blade in his hand seemed to have swallowed some rare delicacies, and the blade continued to spit out blood-red light, and he was extremely excited. The ancient beast in the animal world is quite interesting. Mu Qiu's eyes were filled with excitement. It has been a while since he saw an opponent that could interest him. But that's all. With a swish, the demon sword in his hand turned into a blood light and returned to the box of the monster. Mu Qiu stretched out one hand forward, and a black and red flame vortex suddenly appeared in front of him, and the vortex was the endless black void. When he stretched his arm out of the vortex, an extremely domineering red sword appeared in his hand. The long sword seemed to be made of pieces of dragon scales, and there were black spells engraved on the sword. The supreme kingly power faintly emanated from it caused the space to begin to tremble violently. The king's night sword. After many days, when this kingly sword carrying the luck of a clan appeared in Mu Qiu's hand again, Mu Qiu's momentum also rose to an unimaginable level. He held the king's night sword in his hand and swung it towards the mountain like Kuei Niu. A fiery red streak with supreme kingly power cut through the space and turned into a phantom of a giant dragon and shot out. Kuei Niu felt the terrifying pressure coming from the front, and his pupils trembled, but he had no time to dodge, and the lightning wrapped around his body crackled. With a loud bang, Kuei Niu's huge body was instantly shattered by the red dragon. Even the space behind it was blasted into a bottomless dark void by the passing dragon. The dark purple thunders that intertwined between heaven and earth were all swallowed up by Mu Qiu, and the black and red color gradually engulfed the heaven and earth. Roar! Another dragon roar resounded, and the dozens of feet-long world-destroying candle dragon opened its eyes and turned into a dark red shadow standing behind Mu Qiu. The dragon's might mixed with the king's power echoed in this world, and the countless remaining livestock and beasts below also fell in love with it at this moment, and let out a low roar of obedience, welcoming their new monarch. From this moment on, the long silent animal path welcomed its new master. Sign in at the end of the world. Start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 584. Deep in a dense and prosperous primeval forest, a faint blue light suddenly flashed. Under the hazy clouds and mist, the outline of the gate of reincarnation slowly emerged in the mid-air of the forest. But what is different from the past is that this time the open door turns into a deep blue color, as if it is the netherworld gate leading from the netherland to the real world. Under a flash of dim light, Mu Qiu's figure slowly walked out of the gate of reincarnation. At this time, Mu Qiu had already retreated from the form of a candle dragon, with her black hair flying freely and a soft smile on her face. In the secluded forest in front of Mu Qiu, Lu Qianqian and the Tree King had been waiting for a long time. The moment they saw Mu Qiu appear, the two of them already knew the result. This demon lord never failed. Lu Qianqian even flew into Mu Qiu's arms, pretending to be a little daughter and said softly, "My lord is great." Ignoring Lu Qianqian's tricks, Mu Qiu just smiled and nodded, then looked behind her at the crystal coffin wrapping Su Wen. At Mu Qiu's signal, the Tree King dispersed the roots and branches that bound the crystal coffin. Inside the crystal-clear crystal coffin was a pure white and flawless beauty. Mu Qiu waved his hand, and a white stream of light suddenly flashed through the blue door behind him, and shot straight into the center of Su Wen's eyebrows in the crystal coffin. As this stream of light came in, Su Wen's originally pale face actually showed a touch of rosy, and then her frowning brows frowned slightly. It was like the shackles that had not been loosened for a long time were slowly opened, and the lid of the crystal coffin disappeared like a transparent film. "Beast King, you finally wake up." The Tree King's voice that was gathered by the fluorescence was old, and even the surrounding plants began to glow with a green light. Far away in the valley, the monsters living in the deep forest also sensed something, and roared one after another. And Su Wen also slowly opened her eyes amidst the faint roar of the monster. "Grandpa Tree King, this is..." But immediately, Su Wen saw the familiar black-robed figure standing in front of her. Su Wen, who had not yet fully recovered, subconsciously exclaimed, "Master!" Everything that happened in the animal realm was more like an endless nightmare to her. Now that she woke up from the nightmare and saw Mu Qiu's figure, she instantly felt a lot more at ease. With a smile on her lips, Mu Qiu stepped forward and rubbed Su Wen's silky hair as usual. The person in front of him was not the peerless Beast King who was powerful in the southern border, but the same cute girl in a floral dress. Mu Qiu waved her hand again, and the mist-shrouded gate of samsara behind her once again glowed with dim light. Two streams of light flashed out and flew into Su Wen's side. When the two streams of light gradually faded, what was revealed was a brown squirrel and a palm-sized sparrow. Kuakuo, Mao Mao. Seeing the return of her beloved pet, Su Wen's face suddenly showed a look of joy. She picked up the naive squirrel and gave it a squeeze. Compared to Lu Qianqian, who pretends to be shy and childish, Su Wen has the true mentality of a child. Seeing the youthful Su Wen, Lu Qianqian pouted. Her voice was charming. She approached Mu Qiu and whispered, "If you like, sir, I can dress up like this." Mu Qiu. Looking at Su Wen, who was gradually recovering, Mu Qiu asked her why she was trapped in the animal path. After the battle at the beast nest that day, the yin and yang of Su Wen and Ye Fanyan combined to open the door to reincarnation. Mu Qiu took the lead in entering the gate of reincarnation and came to the world 1,000 years later, while Ye Fanyan, Ye Shenwei, and others also came here by accident. Mu Qiu had already expected that Su Wen would also come here, but how the latter entered the animal realm was still a mystery. Su Wen lowered her head and looked at the silver bracelet on her wrist, and fell into deep thought. "I saw that mysterious man in a white robe." Hearing Su Wen say the words "man in white robe," a gleam flashed in Mu Qiu's eyes. When he passed through the gate of reincarnation, the white-robed man also appeared in front of Mu Qiu and said some unintelligible words. Who is this man in white robe, and what is his purpose? According to Su Wen's description, shortly after Mu Qiu disappeared, she was also attracted by the gate of reincarnation, but she saw the mysterious figure wrapped in a white robe. Soon Su Wen gradually lost consciousness, and eventually her soul was lost in the animal path among the 6 paths of reincarnation. Mu Qiu looked at Su Wen's pure white face and thought to herself. Su Wen possesses the source of Kanyu, one of the 8 sources of creation. The reason why she made rapid progress in those years was not only the source of Kanyu, but also the reason for the white-robed man. If the man in white robe had not rescued Su Wen at the critical moment and brought her to the world 1,000 years later, Su Wen would not have been given enough time to grow up, and there would be no way to subdue the 4 ferocious beasts in southern Xinjiang and suppress all the beasts. The Beast King of the Mountains. But now that the man in white robe has imprisoned him in the animal realm, is he simply leading Mu Qiu to open the shackles of the animal realm? Demon Lord, I have something to say. While Mu Qiu was thinking, the tree king on the side suddenly spoke. Mu Qiu raised his head and looked at the towering tree. Under the tree, the shadow of an old man wrapped in fluorescent light slowly spoke. I wonder if Lord Demon Lord has ever felt the changes in this world. Changes in heaven and earth. Mu Qiu recalled the natural disasters and phenomena she encountered in the previous human villages, as well as the anomalies in the way of heaven, and nodded slightly. I believe the Demon Lord has noticed that this world has lost its original balance for some reason. The heaven is in disorder, the sky is broken and the earth is broken. It has fallen into the brink of collapse. The old man transformed by the tree king stroked his beard. A man in his 50s still knows his destiny. Having lived for 10,000 years, he has a unique perception of the world and destiny. Although I don't know what happened, I think this matter is very likely related to the heterogeneous religion. Heterogeneous religion. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 585. In a palace that no one knows about, the fairy mist is lingering and the palaces are beautiful. Deep in a certain palace, an extremely strong spatial fluctuation suddenly erupted. With a flash of white light, the figures of Mu Qiu and Lu Qianqian appeared in front of the hall. Lu Qianqian is wearing a red gauze skirt, her breasts are full and her figure is graceful and charming. He pouted at Mu Qiu beside him. My lord also said that he is not interested in that little girl Su Wen. He cares about her so much. As soon as Su Wen returned from the animal world, Qiu left Su Wen at the Tree King's place to recuperate. Obviously, Lu Qianqian was a little bit disgusted by this. Qiu looked at Lu Qianqian dumbfounded and said, Xiaoan's identity is a bit special, and I have other plans for the follow-up. Then Qiu looked thoughtfully at the palace in the distance. Besides, I think that rather than this kind of thing, you should care about your own territory. Lu Qianqian seemed to have noticed something when she heard this. She looked at the palace in the distance and opened her mouth with a look of surprise. What's going on? Looking along Lu Qianqian's line of sight, she saw that one of the palaces had turned into ruins at some point, and there was still a strong evil aura left in the ruins. A group of orcs dressed as palace maids were cleaning up the fallen debris from the ruins, but they still dared not get close to the deep pit ruins filled with evil aura. What's going on? Lu Qianqian's voice came out of thin air, and the maids below saw it and quickly leaned down to worship. Empress Meiji. Lu Qianqian rose into the air, her eyes sharp, her voice charming but also filled with anger. Under the watchful eyes of the public, she once again transformed into a charming queen of unparalleled elegance, without anger or authority. Who did this? Lu Qianqian lowered her eyes, and everyone could see the anger in her eyes. After all, she is an old fox who has lived for thousands of years. In terms of qualifications, even contemporary demon lords are not as experienced as her. At this time, a figure walked out of the guards. It was the rabbit-eared maid who had brought Qiu here, and responded. Go back to your majesty, it's the Night Evil King. Lord Night Evil, he's here to see your majesty. Then, the maid told Lu Qianqian everything that happened here. It turned out that the Night Fury King came to visit Meiji in the palace and did not find Lu Qianqian's whereabouts, but he found Qi Xiaoxiao peeping in the dark. Qi Xiaoxiao was the victim of the marriage between his father, the Chaotic Beast King, and the Night Fury King, and it was for this reason that Qi Xiaoxiao fled thousands of miles from the Chaotic Beast King's territory to the northern desert. As a result, the Night Evil Owl King took Qi Xiaoxiao away without seeing Lu Qianqian. Many maids present did not dare to stop him at all under the power of the Owl King. You dare to take people away from my territory before I show up. The Night Fury is so brave. Lu Qianqian snorted coldly, her face as cold as frost, and her face was already sullen. In order to maintain her appearance and lifespan, Lu Qianqian could not leave the white jade bed where the time and space crystal was placed. After all, she had been silent in the palace for so long that the last time she took action was hundreds of years ago. The world's impression of her strength has long been blurred, but they only remember the beautiful Empress Meiji. Qiu, who heard the whole process from the side, stared at the ruins filled with strange evil aura. The Night Fury Owl King, is he from the Night Clan? Qi Xiaoxiao has the ability to sense the breath of reincarnation and can help Qiu discover the existence of the shackles of the gate of reincarnation. Naturally, Qiu will not abandon it. Besides, the Yanjai royal family has a disobedient descendant, and he, the creator, should go and teach him a lesson. Seemingly sensing Qiu's plan, Lu Qianqian approached Qiu and whispered. Sir, the engagements of the Yanjai royal family usually have to be held in a grand ceremony. Your apprentice will not encounter any danger for the time being. Before that, you have to go to a place. Where? Qiu's eyes flashed. Lu Qianqian opened her red lips lightly and said a word that Qiu was very familiar with. The ancestral land of the human race, Yuhe. Everyone has been waiting for you for a long time. In a dark and quiet space somewhere, there is a magic circle with a 12-pointed star printed on it. Suddenly, the magic circle flashed with a strange light, and all the corners burned out of thin air with ghostly soul fires. Only a few corners were dim. It's been so long, how's the plan going? A deep voice came from a soul fire swallowing light. He, you've been waiting for 1,000 years, and you still have this little time left. A playful voice came out. Humph. I think you should know better than me what the situation is in this world. One step at night and our thousands of years of planning will be in ruins. As this sound fell, the entire space became silent, and the owners of these soul fires fell into deep thought. The way of heaven and humanity has begun to awaken. At this moment, a hoarse old voice came from a certain soul fire. According to the current information, the hungry ghost path should be in the blood demon who appeared recently. It's almost time to wrap up our plan. The deep and violent voice said. Leave that blood demon to me to deal with. I haven't seen such a rampant human being for a long time. I want to see how capable he is. Our 1,000-year plan must not allow any mistakes to occur again. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 586. A basin surrounded by mountains on the back, with human-style buildings standing one after another. The whole basin is beautiful with clear water and green mountains, birds singing and flowers blooming, which can be called a feng shui treasure land with outstanding people and beautiful scenery. Only by looking carefully can you find that the area of hundreds of kilometers is wrapped by a layer of barrier, which emits a faint white mist, separating it from the outside world. This is the ancestral land of the human race, which is regarded as a holy place by countless human races Yuhe. On the other hand, the area outside the barrier has turned into a wasteland. The dry land is dry and lifeless. Thousands of years ago, Xiao Hanyan, one of the first generation of Owl kings and known as the Peerless Wisdom, noticed the gap between the human race and the Yanjai royal family, as well as the unstoppable development speed of the Yanjai clan. It seems that he has seen the fate of the decline of the human race. In order to protect the last trace of the human race's bloodline, Xiao Hanyan set up a barrier in Yuhe and made a rule that the alien race must not step into Yuhe for generations. Because of this ancestral precept from the first generation of the Owl King, the Yuhe area has become the last pure land of the human race. But now, with the change of times, the constraints of this ancestral precept have become weaker and weaker, and even the pure land of Yuhe has become precarious. Tengtengton. A burst of wild beasts galloped in the wasteland in the distance, and the sky was gradually covered by clouds. An extremely terrifying breath began to spread from the distant sky, and the sky above Yuhe was also covered with dark haze. Roar. Pairs of scarlet pupils opened in the darkness, staring at one of the pure lands through the transparent barrier. Countless monsters came from the end of the horizon, surrounding the territory of Yuhe like a wave. Even the sky was filled with dense monsters and birds, covering every inch of the Yuhe area. On the backs of these birds and beasts, there were tall figures wearing heavy armor. These soldiers riding on magic beasts and in uniform have different appearances. There are half-orcs with hideous faces, corpses with strong corpse aura, and eternal night people with dark purple skin and bloodshot eyes. They came here for only one purpose, that is, to extinguish the last fire of the human race and destroy the ancestral land of Yuhe. Just as the demon army outside the barrier was watching covetously, the humans inside Yuhe also sensed the coming of danger. Bang! A loud bang came from the wall of a white jade hall deep in Yuhe. A rough-faced human man punched the wall beside him with a fierce sound. Damn it, are these monsters still targeting Yuhe? You forget your ancestors and even forget the ancestral teachings. The hall is already full of human figures. They are all respected elders of the human race in the ancestral land, and they are also human aliens who should not be underestimated in terms of strength. But now, these powerful aliens, who are all demon generals, are silent and silent. They are all the top powerhouses of the human race today, and even if they are placed in the outside world, they are masters of various continents. However, they know what kind of opponent they will face. It is not the army outside that is pressing in, but the entire Yanjai dynasty. From the moment the Yanjai royal family sent out the army, The end of the destruction of Yuhei was doomed. The current human race and the entire Yonjai clan are just like a gnat trying to shake a tree, and they are overestimating their own strength. Hundreds of years have passed, and the human race can't escape this disaster after all. If the ancestral land is destroyed by the Night Clan's iron cavalry this time, then the fire of our human race will really be extinguished. Where is the teleportation array? Send away the young generation with potential in our clan first. A human elder said anxiously, and he must keep the last glimmer of hope for mankind at all costs. It's useless. The space barrier outside the Jade Sea has been restricted. They intend to trap us to death inside. Instantly, everyone's face was ashen, numb, and frustrated. A hunched figure stood on the altar deep in the hall, wearing a mask with a fire totem on his head, gray hair behind his head, and holding a cane burning with flames. This person is the leader of the contemporary human race. In the long history of the human race, no one knows how long he has lived. Everyone only remembers his code name, Yan. Just when many elders were worried, a slender figure walked out of the crowd. Sir Saint. Yafanyan walked straight to the masked old man and bowed, Patriarch, now our race is in danger, please sacrifice that holy object to protect the human race from this disaster. Holy object. Everyone suddenly remembered that it was rumored that the ancestor of the human race, Xiao Hanyan, had left behind a taboo holy object, which was rumored to be only used when the human race was about to be robbed. After hearing this, everyone saw the dawn of hope again, and looked at the old man in the hall with burning eyes. There were also very few elders who set their sights on Yafanyan. If I remember correctly, this saint in front of me has only appeared for a few years, and he was named the contemporary saint of the human race by the clan leader. Not to mention that the saint in front of me has extraordinary strength at a young age, even the matter of the sacred objects in the ancestral land is only known by some elders with rich experience. So where did the saint get the news about the sacred objects? Under the gaze of countless hopeful eyes, Yan, the clan leader of the human race, slowly shook his head and said in an old but unquestionable tone. It's not the time yet. The Jade Sea has been pressed by the army and is in danger. Now is not the time to sacrifice the holy object. Should we wait until the Jade Sea is destroyed before using it? The many elders present looked at each other, unable to understand why the clan leader made such a decision. Yafanyan looked up and looked at the clan leader, and saw the calmness in his eyes. I know. Yafanyan didn't say much, turned around and looked at the many elders in the hall, with a calm face, and said solemnly. In this case, I will lead everyone to defend the last pure land of the human race. Defend the Jade Sea to the death. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mocienu. Chapter 587. Roar. Accompanied by the roar of thousands of beasts, a large haze completely covered the sky above the Jade Sea, as if a giant beast covering the sky was about to swallow up the world in front of it. Countless pairs of scarlet and violent eyes stared at the translucent space barrier in front of them, trying to tear apart all the creatures inside. And above the sky covering the Jade Sea, several extremely terrifying auras were quietly brewing. Several armored figures riding on strange beasts exuded a powerful aura that made people's hearts flutter just by standing there, and behind them stood soldiers from various alien tribes. And in the barrier of the barrier, there were also countless pairs of eyes spying on the army outside. It's the 6 generals of the alien demons under the high priest of the Night Clan. Who would have thought that these monsters would come? In the Jade Sea, countless humans looked at the dark sky in front of them with panic, and children curled up in the arms of adults and trembled. An elder couldn't help but scream in horror when he saw the 6 figures hovering in the sky. The status of the high priest in the Eternal Night Dynasty is second to none, and in ancient times, it was also a role of the national master level. And these 6 generals of the alien demons are a trump card under the high priest of the Night Clan. These so-called six generals are not only at the level of demon generals, but each of them has reached the level of lords, and ordinary lords will not be their opponents. This time, in order to get rid of them, the Eternal Night Dynasty actually used 6 lord-level beings at the same time. General, the High Priest has ordered us to eradicate the Yuhei human race as soon as possible. Under the dark sky, a soldier in armor bowed to a figure in the front. The human figure was particularly large, several meters tall, holding a giant axe demon soldier, but his face looked like a tusked wild boar. And on the wasteland behind him, there was also a group of orcs who looked like wild boars. I know. The wild boar general's eyes flashed with scarlet light. With a wave of his hand, the army behind him retreated together, and a row of siege crossbows with a destructive aura appeared in front of the army. Gaga! Suddenly, a strange hoarse cry came from the sky, and a huge crow appeared above the army, with a pair of humanized pupils turning. Zulai, you must order your men to look more accurately, and don't make a joke of accidentally injuring friendly troops again. The huge crow flapped its wings, with a clear mocking tone. Humph! Zulai General snorted coldly, spitting out foul air from his nostrils, and the ground under him was cracked by the shaking of the giant axe. Dark Crow, just take care of your own people. Don't let the small shrimps under your command be wiped out by the tiny humans. Roar! As if in response to General Zulai's words, the half-beast pig army behind him roared, and even the surrounding alien armies roared, ready to move. Okay, since the High Priest has ordered, we should not waste time, a general shouted. In an instant, accompanied by a deafening cannon sound, rows of siege crossbows flashing with magic energy fluctuations fired out. The sky full of magic energy shells all bombarded the transparent barrier in front of them. Gaga! At the same time, a fierce cry of crows came from the sky, and a group of crows flew, covering the sky and the sun, and countless black feathers turned into sharp arrows and shot out. Immediately afterwards, countless alien armies also attacked the barrier that looked like a glass cover at the order of the generals. Boom boom! The sky was full of crossbows bombarding in front, and under a burst of colorful magic energy attacks, the barrier array that had protected the Jade Sea for thousands of years finally showed signs of breaking. There were several crackling sounds, and spider-web-like cracks appeared on the surface of the barrier, which already consumed a lot of energy. Get out of the way! The majestic magic energy wave swept over, and General Zulai was seen carrying a huge axe on his shoulder, and the ground under his feet collapsed. He chopped the barrier with a huge magic power. Finally, after a group of gorgeous white light exploded, the barrier separating the Jade Sea from the outside world finally broke. Come on! Little ones, eat all the humans inside for me. Zulai pulled out the giant axe embedded in the ground with force, and the veins on his forehead bulged. He roared at the alien army behind him. In an instant, countless alien armies rushed into the Jade Sea like a wave, and the black mass was endless. Zombies, monsters, orcs, night tribes, the surging army brought with it a murderous intent, and all the flowers and plants withered wherever they passed. Kill! Almost at the moment when the alien army broke through the barrier, the human aliens who had been ready for battle rushed out of the Jade Sea, holding magic weapons and rushing towards the surging alien army with determination. Behind them was their homeland for survival. At this time, the army was approaching, and there was no escape. The only way was to fight to the death with this group of invading aliens. Even those ordinary people without superpowers in their bodies mustered up their courage, picked up magic weapons that were extremely inconsistent with their body size, and rushed to the battlefield to fight the bloodthirsty aliens. But it was obvious that just from the huge difference in numbers and strength between the human and alien armies, the human race fell into an extremely huge disadvantage as soon as the two armies fought. Countless humans were instantly annihilated under the iron hoofs of the alien army. What's worse, some monsters opened their fangs and mouths and devoured humans one by one on the spot. The blood and wailing in the air showed the miserable situation of human beings, but this was also the best nutrient to stimulate the bloody outburst of these alien monsters. Hiss. A mummy zombie with bandages all over his body grabbed a human head and bit it, and blood splattered everywhere. The mummy stretched out his long tongue stained with blood, licked the blood between his lips, and his dry face looked intoxicated. Boom. At this moment, a violent roar suddenly came from the side of the zombie. The large number of zombie aliens around were instantly blasted into slag by the scorching magic energy, and even the mummy rolled on the ground to dodge in panic. Even so, the mummy's side was still hit by the magic energy shell, and one arm and the arm were instantly evaporated. Hiss. The mummy looked carefully and saw a nearly 10-meter tall azure mecha slowly descending from the sky in the distance. The cannon barrel connected to one of its mechanical arms was still emitting destructive energy. This is Apocalypse Mecha. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 588. Hiss. Accompanied by the roar of the wings, the tall mecha descended on this battlefield, and the huge figure instantly attracted the attention of the surroundings. That is the legendary Apocalypse Mecha. The Azure Mecha raised the mechanical arm inlaid with the light cannon, and the destructive wave was brewing at the muzzle. With the continuous sound of boom, several deep red destructive lasers shot out. Where the laser passed, countless alien armies evaporated instantly, leaving only a pool of scarlet blood on the ground. That is the magic soldier of the second-generation Demon Lord, the Apocalypse Mecha. A demon general fighting on the battlefield felt the vast breath coming from afar, looking at the mighty and domineering Mecha, muttering to himself. It is rumored that the second-generation Demon Lord once had a magic soldier treasure that could enable the user to exert a powerful strength like destroying the world. In the past hundreds of years, countless people flocked to it, but they could never find its trace. In the space inside the Apocalypse armor, Hong Lian, with her full red hair, frowned, and her forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. Her limbs were connected by red energy threads, and the magic energy in her body was constantly pulled and absorbed by the huge mecha. With her strength as a 9th-level demon general, it was already extremely difficult to operate this mecha, let alone drive the mecha to fight against these alien armies. But even so, Hong Lian also urged the power of her whole body to supply the Apocalypse Mecha, and she had to kill as many enemies as possible at the last limit. Because what she was protecting behind her was the last territory of mankind. In the territory of Yuhei, a group of humans looked at the tragic battlefield in the distance with horror, and their expressions were uneasy. A girl buried her head in her mother's arms in fear, her body trembling involuntarily, but her mother could only close her eyes, and 2 lines of clear tears fell silently from the corners of her eyes. They were all old, weak, and disabled people who could not go to the battlefield. The only thing they could do was to give their sincere prayers to the gods, praying for the miracle that was beyond doubt. On the battlefield on the distant horizon, with the participation of the Apocalypse Mech controlled by Hong Lian, the battle entered a white-hot stage. The Apocalypse Mech was indeed a top-grade magic soldier that attracted all the alien races. It showed its invincibility as soon as it entered the battlefield. Every bombardment of the laser cannon installed on the mechanical arm would wipe out a large number of alien armies in this world. In a short moment, the ground around the Apocalypse Mech was riddled with holes, and no grass grew. The humans behind him were also inspired by the Apocalypse Mech, and they all attacked the alien army beside them with the intention of dying. The elders living deep in the Jade Sea also joined the battlefield. They were all ancient beings who had lived for hundreds of years, and their strength should not be underestimated. In an instant, the battlefield of Yuhei was steaming like boiling water. In the blink of an eye, corpses were everywhere and bones were piled up. The tall right arm of the Apocalypse Mecha fired a laser cannon to kill an orc, but suddenly a black shadow rushed over from the side. The mechanical arm of the apocalypse mecha suddenly disassembled and turned into a heavy shield, blocking the attack of the Black Shadow. Even so, a corroded dent still appeared on the heavy mechanical shield, and the Black Shadow flashed in the air and fell on the ground hundreds of meters away. When the Black Shadow fell, it was the mummy zombie whose arm was blown off by the apocalypse mecha before. But at this time, the missing arm of the mummy grew back strangely, and there was an extra scimitar blade emitting decayed poison in his hand. The dark green poison gathered on the blade to form the shape of a venomous snake, and then slowly dissipated. This mummy monster is one of the 6 generals of the alien demons, and possesses the strength of a lord. At this moment, the ground under the apocalypse mech suddenly shook, and a huge humanoid monster suddenly rushed out from deep underground. The wings behind the apocalypse mech stretched out, and it flew across the sky to avoid this fierce attack. The monster that rushed out from the ground also revealed its figure. It was actually a tall orc with a bull head and a human body. With curved horns on his head and a heavy aura on his body, this bull-headed man is also one of the 6 Lord-level generals. In order to get rid of the apocalypse mech as soon as possible, 2 Lord-level alien demon generals besieged it at the same time. Hong Lian was struggling to control the mech to deal with a demon general, let alone now fighting 1 against 2. The apocalypse mech was soon beaten back. Tianlai Novel Network. On the other side, the human race also fell into decline under the surging offensive of the alien army. A large number of human races were brutally killed, and the remaining ones also had a retreat mentality, and the army was broken. However, at the critical moment, a dazzling golden light suddenly broke out in the center of the battlefield. In the center of the light, a slender figure holding a long sword with a firm look in her eyes could be vaguely seen. A golden beam of light rose from Yafanyan's body and instantly dispersed the black fog covering the dome. This is... A demon general looked dull. Under the shining of this golden light, he actually felt a fatal threat. And the surrounding alien army subconsciously retreated again and again, not daring to get close to the golden light. The black fog covering the Jade Sea was dispersed, and the faint light mixed with the golden light sprinkled below, and the color of hope appeared in everyone's eyes for the first time. Through the newly opened dome, it seemed as if a long dormant eye slowly opened in the dark, overlooking the world with an arrogant look that looked down on everything. On the hills far away from the Jade Sea, a black-robed figure looked at the battlefield of humans and demons in the distance. His eyes swept between the golden light and the golden pupils of the dome one by one, and finally stopped at the center of the Jade Sea. With a smile on his lips, Mewtwo narrowed his eyes and smiled. Really, there are many familiar auras. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the Flame Demon Lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 589. A beam of light suddenly rose up near the battlefield of Yuhei. Wherever the golden beam of light reached, the surrounding alien armies all retreated, and they all felt a terrifying palpitation from it. When this beam of golden light pierced the clouds and dispersed the black fog covering Yuhei, it seemed that a golden pupil opened above the dark sky, majestically overlooking all living beings. Many creatures on the battlefield could not see the existence of the golden pupil in the sky, but they inexplicably felt that they were being watched by an invisible gaze, and there was no secret in their bodies. Only some powerful Lord-level beings could vaguely feel that there was a vague golden pupil in the sky staring at them. In an instant, the whole scene became extremely silent, so quiet that only each other's breathing and the ghost-like wailing around the battlefield could be heard. The heavenly Deo, which had been silent for thousands of years, woke up again at this moment. On the tall hill behind Yuhei, Mewtwo looked at the golden pupil in the sky without hesitation, with an indifferent expression. What is heavenly Deo? It can be understood as the self-consciousness born in this world. Although heavenly Deo is not as active as human beings, it has the most basic instincts compared to all living things. It will not allow the world to give birth to existences beyond heavenly Deo. The kingly Deo that Muchu comprehended escaped reincarnation, was not afraid of heavenly Deo, and shocked all living things. It happened to have the power to surpass heavenly Deo, which was why it was madly suppressed by heavenly Deo. When Muchu was staring at the eye of heavenly Deo, the latter obviously also noticed Muchu's existence. The golden pupil stared at Muchu for a few breaths, but surprisingly did not choose to attack him. Muchu's eyes were deep, and different from the strong one 1,000 years ago. This time he actually saw a trace of fatigue in the golden pupil that looked down on everything. The eye of heavenly Deo swept through the tens of thousands of living beings below, and finally stopped its gaze on Yefanyan, who was holding the golden holy sword in the center of the battlefield. Shua! A dazzling golden light suddenly burst out from the golden eye, and it poured into Yefanyan's body like a revelation. The golden light column connecting heaven and earth instantly exuded a vast and boundless aura, and the aura on Yefanyan's body also rose step by step, simple and profound. The alien warriors around who were close to the golden light were annihilated by the mighty golden light in an instant. In the hall deep in the Jade Sea, Yan wearing a fire mask on his head looked at the golden light column that suddenly appeared in the center of the battlefield and murmured. Finally appeared, the power of the heavenly man Deo. At this moment, a water curtain surrounded by mist suddenly appeared behind Yan, and a mysterious figure in a red robe slowly stepped out of the water curtain. Yan was not surprised by the red-robed figure that suddenly appeared behind him. He just said, "The Lord of Eternal Night has disappeared for nearly 1,000 years. Why do we have to be so cautious in doing things?" The red-robed figure shook his head, stared at the beam of light in the distance, and whispered, "I have a hunch that he will come back one day. Our 1,000-year plan can't afford any mistakes." As the golden light in the sky became stronger and stronger, several generals leading the alien demon army also came to their senses. The leading Zulai shouted angrily, "No, stop her." Although he didn't know what happened, he had already felt a fatal threat from the golden light and had to stop the human woman. With his roar, the other generals also stopped killing and attacked in the direction of Yefanyan. In an instant, several powerful magic attacks all gathered towards Yefanyan in the center of the battlefield. The 6 generals of the alien demons are the first trump cards under the High Priest of Eternal Night. The strength of each of them is not comparable to that of an ordinary lord. Now the 6 generals of the alien demons are besieging together. Even the Owl King of a party has to avoid their sharp edge and dare not resist this strong attack. However, Yefanyan, who was standing in the center of the storm, opened his eyes in the next second. The golden pupil in the sky also disappeared into the dome. Yefanyan's eyes actually showed a touch of golden light, and even her body seemed to be covered with a layer of golden light. The holy sword in her hand changed its appearance, full of holiness and simplicity. Then, Yefanyan let out a cry, and the wind vortex under her lifted her up in the air, and the holy sword in her hand was shining brightly. In an instant, a dazzling golden sword energy mixed with a sharp wind breath shot out across the sky, and the alien demon army was cut and pierced wherever it passed, melting like ice and snow. The power of a sword is so terrifying. Even the combined attack of the 6 demon generals was completely blocked by the golden sword energy. The golden light is simply the nemesis of magic. What kind of power is that golden light? It is so terrifying. Before many aliens came to their senses, Yefanyan had already swung the holy sword and counterattacked in the direction of the demon generals. Yefanyan's eyes flashed with golden light, and several more sharp golden sword energies were bombarded. This time the target was Zulai, headed by the 6 demon generals. Zulai felt the mighty breath coming from the sword energy, and immediately raised the demon soldier's giant axe in front of him with a look of fear. But when several sword energies bombarded Zulai's body at the same time, even the extremely heavy demon soldier's giant axe could not withstand the strong golden light and shattered instantly. Zulai's body was hit by several sword energies, and his huge body flew backwards uncontrollably, instantly knocking down a hill behind him, and mud and rocks rolled down, and he was no longer alive. On the hill with Yuhai's back, Muqiu looked at the eye of heaven hidden in the sky, and a hint of intriguing smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. This time, Muqiu's sight was looking at Yefanyan, who was like a Valkyrie and invincible in the battlefield. The holy golden light seemed to have put a layer of armor on her, and no one could stop her wherever she went. Countless admiring eyes were staring at that beautiful figure. The box of the ghosts on Muqiu's chest also shook uncontrollably at this time, as if it was attracted by something. At this point, Muqiu finally understood why the heavenly Dao was the most mysterious and the most difficult to pursue among the 6 paths. Divine power is bestowed by heaven. If you want to obtain the power of the heavenly Dao, the first step is to get the recognition of the heavenly Dao and become the only person with destiny in the world. Sign in at the end of the world. Start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 590. Yes, it's the Holy Sun. The Holy Sun is here to save us. On the ground of the Jade Sea, countless humans looked at the figure wrapped in golden light in the sky with hope, and their expressions were excited. When they were in despair, the Holy Sun actually descended from the sky and suppressed the attacking demon general like a martial god. The flame of hope was rekindled in the hearts of many human beings. Everyone cast their eyes in the direction of Yefanyan, and some people even clasped their hands devoutly and closed their eyes to pray. From this moment on, Yefanyan was the only light in their hearts. The magical thing is that as more and more humans prayed, the light emanating from Yefanyan became stronger and stronger, and the momentum around him became more and more majestic. On the hills of the Jade Sea, Muqiu's eyes were like torches. He could clearly feel that a Dao Yun was gradually generated on Yefanyan holding the holy sword. Under the blessing of the heavenly Dao, Yefanyan's strength at this moment made great progress and suddenly entered the Daoyuan level. Quick, everyone, get rid of this human. The remaining 5 demon generals felt the terrifying fluctuations emanating from Yefanyan, and immediately ordered their alien army to launch a fierce attack. In an instant, tens of thousands of alien figures attacked Yefanyan like an overwhelming force, looking from afar like ants swarming out of their nests. The remaining human warriors had already lost the power to resist, and were completely unable to resist the fierce attack of the alien army. Seeing that Yefanyan's tiny body was about to be swallowed by the black wave, the jade pendant on Yefanyan's chest suddenly burst out with dazzling golden light. The next second, Yefanyan raised the holy sword in his hand again, and the flashing golden pupils in his eyes were indifferent and arrogant, just like the eyes of heaven that looked down on the world. Clang! The jade pendant on the chest flashed with golden light. As Yefanyan waved the holy sword, the golden light turned into a huge divine bird with golden light all over its body. The image of the divine bird was like a phoenix, with an ancient and majestic aura, looking up to the sky and crying, and it was extraordinary. What is that? In the astonished eyes of countless people, the huge divine bird with golden light all over its body crushed the surging alien army around it. The huge body of the divine bird was mixed with golden light all over the sky, and it swept through the sky like a prairie fire. The alien monsters were instantly annihilated wherever they passed, and even the sky and the earth were stained with a layer of golden light. Even those powerful 9th-level demon generals could not resist the strong power of the golden divine bird. As soon as they touched the golden light, their bodies melted uncontrollably like ice and snow. Not good, M. Several alien demon generals saw this and their pupils shrank suddenly, and they showed their true bodies to resist. The giant bull demon expanded its body several times, turning into a giant bull beast several meters high, and the body of the dark crows scattered into countless crows and fled. But the momentum of the divine bird was too majestic. Under the golden light covering the power of heaven, the magic energy in their bodies was suppressed, and no matter how they changed, it was in vain. After resisting for a while, Several Lord-level alien demon generals were ultimately unable to resist the power of the heavenly way, and their bodies were worn out by the divine power of the divine bird. Clang. After dealing with the last batch of alien armies, the golden divine bird floating in the sky also completed its mission. After a loud cry, it dissipated in this world. The entire battlefield was filled with golden light, and the figure of a woman holding a holy sword in the center of the battlefield, covered with rosy clouds, looked brilliant at this moment. Win, win, we win. Survived, the Holy Sun led us to survive. On the battlefield, the surviving humans stood up, looking at Yefanyan's figure with admiration, their eyes filled with tears of excitement, and words of gratitude came one after another. Yefanyan stared at the sky that was gradually rendered by golden light as the darkness faded away, and a smile appeared at the corner of her mouth with difficulty. Finally, she did it. The holy sword in her hand slowly dissipated, and Yefanyan could not bear the huge consumption. She fell to the ground, the energy fluctuations in her body continued to weaken, and her breath was unstable. Even if she was the destined person chosen by the heaven, she was just a mortal after all, and now she had reached her limit. Is it finally over? However, just when Yefanyan could not hold on, a sharp and gloomy voice suddenly came from her ears. She raised her head suddenly, and saw a group of flying crows suddenly appear in front of her. Countless crows slowly gathered into a human figure, but the face was that of a ferocious crow. Dark Crow. After being baptized by the light of heaven, this alien demon general is still alive. However, at this time, Dark Crow was wearing a red robe, and his eyes were shining with excitement, after spending so much effort, finally. The power of heaven and man, take it. As soon as the voice fell, Dark Crow grabbed Yefanyan's body with a pair of sharp claws. The latter was powerless to resist at this moment, and subconsciously closed his eyes. At the critical moment, a familiar voice echoed in Yefanyan's ears. "Oh, 1,000 years have passed, and you are still as stupid, Dark Crow." Yefanyan opened his eyes in disbelief, and saw a black-robed figure standing in front of him. This familiar back. "You, who are you?" When Dark Crow saw this figure, his pupils trembled instantly, and his body froze in place as if struck by lightning, with indescribable shock and horror in his eyes. The man standing in front of Yefanyan raised his lips and said, "Compared to this, you should talk to your elder brother first." "Who?" Roar. As soon as Muchu finished speaking, a ball of black and purple flames suddenly erupted around him. A fierce tiger with a dark body let out a long roar and rushed out of the flames.